Welcome back to AM Northwest. He was a crack addict and alcoholic who turned his life around, becoming the public face of sober success. But a prescription for opioids following extensive dental surgery sent him back down to the path of addiction. Here to share his story, we welcome the author of Broken Open, What Painkillers Taught Me About Life and Recovery, William Cope Moyers. Good to have you with us, William.
Thank you, Helen, for having me on.
You bet. Now, this is following your first memoir, and that memoir was titled Broken, My Story of Addiction and Redemption. You say this is not a redemption story.
No, it's a story of the rest of my journey. And as many of us in recovery know, in Oregon and across the country, recovery is not linear.
Right.
You know, we aspired for it to be linear, and for many years, my bounce off the bottom in the early 1990s was a upward leg of a V-shaped recovery.
Yeah.
But the rest of life happened, and as you noted, I was prescribed opioids in 2012 for a complicated dental procedure, and the next thing I knew, I couldn't get off of those opioids of my own free will. I couldn't get off of them of my recovery program. I needed more help than I thought than I had ever had before in terms of a medication to help me quiet this craving brain. So my recovery is my recovery, but it's not a perfect recovery.
Right. So here you are, the public face of Hazelden.
Yes.
And nationally, I mean, there are clinics here in Portland,
Yes,
the Portland
we have
area.
two. Yes.
So you're the public face, and how did you find yourself taking more opioids than you needed?
Well, I liked them.
Yeah,
they worked.
That.
I mean, no wonder there's an opioid epidemic in Oregon and across this country that kills thousands and thousands of people. They are a medication that is cunning, baffling, powerful, and patient. It's a medication. Opioids are a drug that likes to hook on to your emotions. And I liked what they did for me. They sort of took the edge off of my life. Right. Now, Helen, the irony of it is I loved my recovery.
Yeah.
And what I have learned through my own experience, and as I share in my book, is that I have discovered in my journey that there's more to recovery than just sobriety.
Right.
Sobriety is an important state of being for people, but if you are struggling in your sobriety, you can still strive for recovery. And while I was the public face of the organization, I've worked there for 28 years, and while I was struggling at times with my sobriety, I still held on to my recovery, and for me that meant holding on to hope.
So did you have a hard time then thinking, here I am, I'm working at a Hazelden, I can go in and see a therapist at any point, I can go in and get some rehab, but since you're the face, that had to have been daunting to say, you know, now I need help again?
Well, it was hard for me to ask for help. I was talking to people about it, my doctor, a psychiatrist, but it was hard for me to admit that I too had a problem. One of the things I struggle with is perfectionism.
Yeah.
And I wanted to continue to look and talk like the person that I had always been known to be as the public face of the organization. So for 3 years I struggled. Part of my struggle was that I could not figure out why I couldn't get out of this addiction the same way I had always gotten out of addiction, with a 12-step program, with my faith, and other tools too. So when I finally decided that I needed to ask for help, I got the help that I needed, and I once again got back on track.
Yeah. You talk about in the book about being afraid of letting people down. That's part of your perfectionism, isn't it?
It's that, and also because I am the public face, I inspire in a lot of people the desire to get better.
Right.
And if I'm not recovering the way that they thought I was recovering, or the way I might even look on the outside, then I was afraid of disappointing people. I was afraid of having people say, well, he's not worth it, I won't ask him for help.
But when you gave speeches, people were coming up to you and applauding you. You also talk about saying, you had this mantra, shame on me.
Shame on me. You know, addiction is an illness that has a lot of shame with it. You know, and there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of stigma. And some of that is external and some of that is internal. And the fact that I could not stop using of my own free will, the fact that I continued to function, the fact that I continued to love my recovery even while I was dependent on these pain pills, it was a tricky situation, and I had a lot of shame. Shame on me.
So anytime someone said something positive to you, you would say to yourself,
I'm not worth it.
I'm not worth it.
I'm not worth it, or they don't really know. And what I've discovered and why I wrote this book is because, again, recovery is not linear. We know at Hazel and Betty Ford, at our facilities here in Oregon, that what we do is put people on the road to recovery. Hooray. But that road of recovery is all about living life on life's terms. And life is hard. We all know that life is hard for us.
Did any coworkers or friends or your wife or your kids notice something was different about you when you were misusing the opioids?
Well, that's the irony. I think you'd have to ask them. I mean, hindsight is always what it is. And now some people have been like, that explains that. That explains it. Although, honestly, Helen, I continue to function. I continue to do my job. I continue to be a good dad to 3 children. I continue to love a woman that I married. That was part of the baffling part of this. Addiction comes in many shapes, sizes, and experiences, and so does recovery. And during my recovery period, even though I was struggling with my sobriety, I still was doing those things that mattered to me as an individual and as a professional.
You started, someone suggested, I don't know if it was a therapist, suggested taking a drug that helped with your cravings for the opioids. And that was kind of your lifesaver, wasn't it?
It was like the magic bullet, not by itself, but it's called Suboxone, or buprenorphine. It's being used extensively now at our facilities for our opioid-dependent patients. It's being used across Oregon and across this country to quiet the craving brain so that people can get on track, so that people can incorporate their recovery program, so they can do those physical, emotional, and mental exercises, if you will. And that was critical to me. I had been abstinent from crack cocaine and alcohol for decades. And yet these opioids latched onto my brain in a way that I couldn't get rid of them, literally or figuratively. The medication that I was prescribed in 2016 was a lifesaver because it restored my ability to get back on track, to continue to work my program of recovery that was much more than just taking this FDA-approved medication. It was a lifesaver.
What are you hoping that people take away from your memoir?
That there is hope. That, you know, if you hold on to hope during those tough times, and I had plenty of tough times in recovery, you can get through it. That shame is endemic with this illness, and the best way to smash shame is to ask for help. And that I want people who have long-term recovery like I do. I'm 65 years old now, and I've been doing this for more than half of my life. I want people to understand that recovery is not linear, that it is filled with challenges, but that we can make it if we take it a day at a time, a step at a time, continue to recognize that we are imperfect and that we can get help even as we continue to walk this journey. That is, I think, is the key message, that there is hope, that recovery is possible, and even when it's interrupted, even when sobriety is interrupted, recovery is still a guiding star.
Absolutely. You have a book event, and it is tonight at Powell's in Cedar Hills, tonight at 7 o'clock. We're going to put all the information on our website at katu.com. And again, the book is titled Broken Open, What Painkillers Taught Me About Life and Recovery. William Moyers, thank you so much. This was just an incredible interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
We'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.